Yeah, I know I'm gonna get flamed for this. Do graphics matter? In a broader sense, have graphics gotten good enough that it's honestly a good thing for the consumer? Because nowadays we see generations of graphics cards and it's like, man, these things are getting so expensive, or the computer components, consoles are even getting more expensive than they have before. And are they pricing consumers out of this market?
For every 1% performance uplift, if you also spend 1% more money, that ruins the part where it's cool.
Okay, look at these games, and I want you to think simple here. What do all of these games have in common? Okay, they are all beautiful. Now look at how many hours I have in these games. Let's take a step back and look at some of the games I put the most hours into. And you might notice with these, the graphics aren't earth-shattering. It's not pushing technology to a completely new level like the games I showed you previously. Yet, more hours have been put into these games than all of the other. Yes, this is anecdotal to me, but the Steam charts do show a similar story. You see, the top games being played generally don't have the most insane graphical requirements. This might be a concept that a lot of you guys can relate to. Honestly, amazing graphics. They can be incredible graphics. Don't necessarily get you playing a game. You might look at it once and be like, wow, that's beautiful, but then not come back to a game that is the most technologically and graphically impressive thing you've ever seen. It's weird because it's always nice to see this technology continue to improve. There's been a huge push with amazing graphics recently. Like, pretty much things are almost photorealistic. Unreal Engine 5 is astounding with what it can put out, and then independent studios all over the place are making beautiful engines that can make the most impressive lighting systems, textures, and visual effects that you'll ever see. But with that much beauty comes its drawbacks, and things are very, very graphically demanding nowadays. In order to run certain things, like especially on PC, you need to pay a lot of money for graphics cards if you want to max games out and be astounded by the visuals in it. You're looking at over $1,600 for a 4090 to get that absolute best experience possible. And this could be a scary thing when only a few years ago top-end cards were much less than that. But because it's all so demanding, you have to pay a lot of money for it, it starts to make you wonder, are the graphics worth it? This is to get this straight. Without a doubt, anybody who saw a game from 20 years ago and a game from current time is going to see a major graphical difference, and I can guarantee 99% of people, unless you're a weirdo that lives in the past, wants the newer graphics. Amazing improvements have been made over the years. But there seems to be a breaking point when people start to care more about performance than they do graphics. And an amazing example is ray tracing on PC, where so many people say it doesn't matter to them. They don't turn it on because the performance hit is just far too much. But you'd have to pay so much money for the performance hit to not matter. Let's bring this into the world of consoles as well. We can't be so narrow-minded on PC because most of people play their games on console, okay? Let's see the Switch, for example. Obviously, the Switch has been overpowered probably since it launched. Nintendo products are almost always underpowered graphically. Let's look at a semi-recent release that was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, when that game dropped, the performance was just god-awful, and the graphics weren't really anything to write home about either to take this massive performance hit.
Now, in docked mode, at least, the target is 30 FPS, and the resolution is a strange one, 1600 by 720.
But, it's Pokemon. Pokemon sells really, really well despite all of the flaws it has.
Scarlet and Violet are the greatest Pokemon games ever made.
And that is because Pokemon is so much more than graphics. That is why it sells so well. They have an amazing universe built up. They make all these really cute, adorable, or cool Pokemon that you just fall in love with on your journey. It has a certain amount of charm that another series can match, as well as this like turn-based combat that they just seem to almost perfect over time. It gets better and better. That's because a game is so much more than just its graphical fidelity. Well, this concept can further extend to this little thing that I like to call benchmark games. I might have you shaking your head right now. Like, what is a benchmark game? Well, an example of one would be Control. Control came out around the 2000 series from NVIDIA, like graphics cards. It was one of the first games to launch with ray tracing. So whenever people wanted to showcase or test these amazing graphics that are out there that they want to use with their graphics cards, they used Control. It became a graphical showcase. I'm being honest, like, it's kind of a bummer to see, but the technology of graphics didn't completely explode a player base or anything like that. Okay, here's another example. Do you guys remember Ashes of the Singularity? the CPU benchmark game that was used over and over again. I don't think ever had a major player base outside of the benchmarking community. It was a CPU test to push the absolute limits of what our chips could do. Also, there's like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. When I'm talking about on PC specifically here, this one might be iffy, but you might be able to extend it to Cyberpunk, because Cyberpunk is like the Crysis 3 of today. It almost seems like if you put a built-in benchmark into a game, you automatically get attention from GPU reviewers. As the player base extend past people wanting to test their graphics. For me personally, I don't find myself going back to games that are just graphical intent. It needs to be deeper than that. These are what I like to call benchmark games. This may or may not help them sell their games on PC or build up some sort of advertising for them. I'm not 100% sure how those kind of numbers work out, because this technology is still extremely impressive. It really shows what things are going to be possible in the future, because photorealism, arguably the closer we get to it, is best, okay? Because that gives developers the flexibility to work with things maybe they would never been able to work with before. They don't necessarily have to make things look photoreal, but it gives them the possibility to do something like that, which is extremely impressive, especially with tech like ray tracing. That extends way past just making a game look beautiful. Ray tracing also makes it a lot easier for the developers to set up their games. A realistic lighting system. So you put whatever objects in your world, you build your scene, and it genuinely just traces light how it should. Now, this can make developers possibly make things look a little samey over time, but this will separate the good from the great studios. But that does mean that things are graphically going to be harder to run for the consumer. They might be easier for devs and stuff. So you can look at it on the bright side though, because if you don't want to use ray tracing, a lot of people might not think about this. Games still look really beautiful without it. The requirements for those games, if you don't use ray tracing or completely max them out, the games are still looking better and better over time, and the requirements to run them hasn't really changed a whole lot. So those graphics cards are just getting cheaper and cheaper with time. They're getting more and more efficient with time. So I can honestly say, if you're not wanting to push the absolute limits, if you just want to play at like 1080p, then you can look at graphics cards like a 6600 XT from AMD or a 3060 from Nvidia, and you can have a really solid gaming experience for honestly not that much money in the grand scheme of things. Like, PC gaming might be as affordable as it ever has been, and that's not the common narrative that people want to tell you right now. It's really nice to be able to appreciate how far and affordable things have come over time. That it might be like with this generation, they're not offering very good price to performance with the new cards coming out. The 4070 is rumored to come out at $600, and that might be the best price to performance we're gonna get this generation. Who knows? But the top end cards are almost like Halo products that a lot of people can't afford. If you're honestly an average consumer, you might not need those products. A lot of people are happy with their cards. They're very capable and pretty affordable, all things considered. I might get a lot of hate for saying that, but realistically, yeah, you can get the best performance and the best graphical fidelity than you ever have. It's really impressive, and we can't take that for granted that innovation hasn't taken place. So does it matter how this generation of graphics cards is priced on PC, when we can just buy the past generation and be completely happy with it, all things considered? You can see kind of how these companies are behaving. Like AMD, since November, when they talked about the 7900 cards, they haven't really mentioned anything since then with the new graphics cards, because I think they're trying to figure out what to do, honestly, and they're not really ready to release stuff as of yet. And Nvidia, by the bulk of the community, is almost getting a nickname of Ingredia, because they've been criticized so heavily with how they're pricing their cards and anti-consumer practices. Are they really doing anything wrong when people can buy a lower end card and really not worry about that? Especially with things like ray tracing, I think a lot of that stuff has developed a lot slower than Nvidia and AMD would have probably liked. They might have decided that, hey, if you want to use that reasonably, you just have to pay a lot more for it, and we shouldn't really expect that on the low-end cards. It's fine. They put extra development time and resources that you pay more money to get it. Yeah, I might get a lot of hate for this video, so let's see how that goes. But that's been it for me. I'll check you guys out in the comments, and wish to see you in the next video. Peace. I wanted to mention here at the end too, I was playing Control for this video, And I had this like preconceived notion that like it wasn't a good game or it was just technically impressive and that was it. But I was actually really impressed with it. I was having a good time, and it was honestly, I just wanted to get footage, and it was kind of hard to put down. So I'm back to it. The gameplay is really fun. The story's a little iffy so far, but I recommend it.